This video will explain and demonstrate the workflow presets that are part of the Landscape Legend Lightroom presets package. Landscape Legend includes 4 different types of presets. They're the one-click presets, graduated filter presets, brush presets, and workflow presets. The purpose of these workflow presets is to allow you to have a great deal of flexibility when editing your photos while still allowing you to speed up your workflow and save a lot of time. When you're working with photos in Lightroom, there are a few different approaches you can take. First option is to use no presets at all and do everything manually. So in this situation, you'll be manually adjusting the sliders, the tone curve, and any other settings that you want to change for your photo. The benefit of doing it this way is you get a totally customized look that works well with your specific photo. The downside is it can take a lot of time. You can easily spend several minutes on one photo, and if you are working with hundreds or thousands of photos at a time, that can really add up quickly. On the opposite end, you have one-click presets. These presets work very quickly by clicking a button. You'll be adjusting all of the settings for a specific photo. The downside of doing it that way is that each photo is different, and not every photo is going to look great with every one-click preset, and not every preset is going to look great with every photo. So you may have a situation where you use a preset on a photo and it looks exactly the way you want it to right away, and you may have other situations where you use a preset and it gets closer to the look you want, but it doesn't get you all the way there, and then you still have to make some tweaks and customizations from there. So the workflow presets are kind of a middle ground between the two. You're still using some presets, but doing it in a flexible way that allows you to get a look that's really customized for each photo. So the best way to explain them and demonstrate them is really just to go through an example. So if you're in Lightroom, you want to go to the Develop module, and then come over here under Presets to the left, and you'll see Landscape Legend Workflow Presets, assuming you have the presets already installed. And then click on the arrow to open up the presets, and you can see there's quite a number of presets in the package here. They're broken down into different categories. There's the lens corrections, black and white, white balance, tones, exposure, and so on. And I'll go through all of them in detail here in a minute. But first, to explain how they work, the settings of each preset only impact the specific settings of that section. So for example, if you are clicking on a preset in one category, it's not going to override the settings applied by a preset in another category. So the purpose is you have several different options in each section, and you can click quickly to compare and see which one works best with your photo, and you can go through that very quickly and find the look that works best without having to mess with the sliders at all. So you can find the right look very quickly by doing it that way. So to go through and explain each section at a time, at the beginning we have the lens corrections. The first one is lens profile correction. If Lightroom recognizes the lens of your camera, you can use this preset to automatically apply a lens correction. In this case, it was a subtle correction, nothing drastic. And then there's another preset for removing chromatic aberration, which you're probably not going to notice unless you're zoomed in on certain photos, where there tends to be like a green or purple line around the edges of some objects in the photo. If that's the case, you can use the remove chromatic aberration, and Lightroom will attempt to automatically remove that from your photo. Then there is a preset to reset those two settings. The next preset is the auto upright, where Lightroom will attempt to automatically straighten your photo if needed. So click on that one, and it does adjust the horizon a little bit there. And then the last preset in this section is to reset the auto upright. And then moving on to the next section is for black and white. If you want to convert your photo to black and white, you can click on that first preset. And then there are 5 different black and white mix options, which will give you slightly different looks. So you can click through here and see which one you like best for your photo. And then the last option here is to reset to color. In this case, I want to work with the color, so I'm going to leave it there. The next section is for white balance adjustments. The first preset is auto white balance, which Lightroom will attempt to automatically find the right white balance setting for your photo. And you have some other white balance settings: daylight, cloudy, shade. And then the last preset here is to reset it, which resets it to the white balance as shot. In this case, I think I'm going to go with the auto white balance for this photo. And then the next section is for tone adjustments, and these presets will impact the sliders for highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. There's several different options here. The first one is called typical tone adjustment, which is just a pretty safe adjustment for most landscape photos. And we'll have bold tones. There's some others here. There's flat tones, some different HDR options. Two that I use a lot are the bold HDR tones 1 and bold HDR tones 2. For this photo, I think I'm going to stick with the second one there. And then there's also at the end a preset to reset the tones back to 0. The next section is for exposure adjustments. You can lighten or darken the photo as needed here, and so you can just click on these presets or just scroll over them and look at the preview here up at the top and see which one works best for your photo. In this case, I believe I'm going to leave the exposure as is. The next section is for contrast adjustments, starting with very strong contrast and then working its way down. You can click on these different presets and see how they impact the photo, then to reset the contrast to 0, and then there's also 3 options here for decreasing contrast. You decrease it by a little, medium, or a lot. For this photo, I think I'm going to use a light contrast boost. Try a few of these and see what works best. Okay, and move on to clarity. Same thing as contrast, you have very strong, all the way down to resetting it to 0, and then down to negative clarity. Should give you a softer look. In this case, I want to use a small clarity boost. So click on a few here and see what I like best. And the next section is for Vibrance and Saturation, starting with very strong adjustment here, and the stronger presets here are really only going to be useful for photos that have very little color, where you really need to give it a strong boost. Most of your color photos, you're probably going to want to stick with one of these lighter Vibrance and Saturation boosts. And you also have the option to reset it to 0 or to desaturate the photo. In this case, I want to use a slight boost, I think. Yeah, so we'll use the first Vibrance and Saturation boost preset. Then moving on, the next one is a curves preset. These presets will give you different types of effects with your photo. So there are a few for different types of matte film looks. There are some for adding haze, brightening. There's some cross-processing curves here, and some vintage curves as well. In this case, I'll go with the soft matte film. And moving on to color adjustments. These presets are really useful for landscape photos because there are a lot of situations where you want to work with specific colors. For example, you may have a photo where you want to bring out the blues in the sky a little bit more, or greens in plants and trees. There are 3 different strengths for each of those presets: a blue boost, a green boost, and then there's also 3 different strengths of blue and green boost if you want to boost both. There are 3 presets for different strengths of boosting autumn colors, which will impact oranges, reds, yellows. And there's also one called Autumn Past Peak, which will be good for photos that were taken slightly after peak autumn colors, where maybe the leaves are a little bit more brown than red. That will boost those. And there's also options for boosting autumn colors plus a blue sky or plus greens. And then also there's the option to reset the color adjustments at the end. Then the next section is for split toning. There are 3 different strengths of warming filters for adding some warmth to your photos. There are 3 different strengths for a cooling filter. There are some presets here for what we call evening tones. And then there are some different split toned options as well. In this case, I'm going to try one of the warming filters. I'll go with the light one. And the next section is for dehaze. So you can either remove haze or add haze using Lightroom's dehaze settings. The stronger ones are going to be for situations where there's a good bit of haze. This photo has a little bit of haze, but not much, so I'll try some of the lighter ones and see. You can also then add haze if you want to. I think I want to use a little bit of the dehaze, but not a lot. So I'll try and I think I'll use the lightest one for this photo. And then moving on to the next section, sharpening. We have 4 different strengths of sharpening. So you can zoom in and try the sharpening presets to see which one works best for your photo, how much sharpening you want. In this case, I'm going to use a light amount of sharpening. The last one is also to reset the sharpening to 0, or it's not to 0, it's to the default settings. The next section is for noise reduction. So while you have it zoomed in, you can also apply a small amount of noise reduction and see how it looks with your photo. And then the last preset here is also to reset the noise reduction. I'm going to zoom back out. Oops. Okay, and the next section is for adding grain. If you want to replicate the look of film grain in your photo, there are a few different strengths of grain here. You can try and see how they impact the photo. And then the last one is to reset. In this case, I don't want to add any grain, so I'm going to reset it. And the last section is for adding a vignette. There are presets for adding dark vignettes and light vignettes and different strengths of each. So in this case, I want to work with dark, so I'm just going to click through and see how the different options look. Again, you can reset with this last preset, and you can also try the light ones. In this case, I want to go with the dark vignette, but I want something subtle, so I'll try the lighter ones and see which one works best. I'll try this one. All right, so in this case, we went through the whole way through the presets with this photo. You can see that it took a little bit of time because I was explaining everything, but if you're just working through the process, it can be a lot quicker. Just to demonstrate real quick, I'm going to reset it and go through. So starting from scratch, I would apply the lens profile correction, remove chromatic aberration, use the auto upright. And I don't want to do black and white, so I'm going to skip that section. Try the auto white balance. Try a few others. And I think I'll go with auto. Then moving on to the tones. I want to try these 2 bold HDR tones and see which one I want. I'll stick with that one. Don't want to adjust the exposure. Contrast, I want a small boost. So try a few different options here. Stick with that one. Same thing with clarity, I want a small boost. So try a few and see how I like the look. That one. Vibrance and saturation, I want to try a little bit. Don't want any stronger than that, so I'll stay there. The curves, I'll try the matte film curves, see which one I like. I'll go with the softer one. Color adjustments, I don't want to do anything there. Split toning. Try the warmer ones. And dehaze, I'll try a few of the lighter settings here. Sharpening, just want to apply light sharpening, light noise reduction, no grain, and I'll try a few different vignettes. Okay, so in just about a minute or two, I've completely gone through and edited that photo and got it to the look that I want without having to mess with any of the sliders. And so that demonstrates and explains the workflow presets. Thank you for watching.